Welcome back to Beauty for Ashes. This is episode 10. We have finally come to 10 episodes in this season. Please go back and support the rest of the series. Show love, show support, comment your thoughts, etc. So now let's get into it. This episode, we're going to talk about obedience, okay? And how important it is to be obedient. And if you run from it, there are consequences, okay? You might not see them now, but usually when we're disobedient, we see it fairly quickly, at least in my case. I did not know initially that I struggled with disobedience. I would hear it all of my life, like, oh, you just don't listen. Like, you don't listen, da-da-da-da. And I was like, I took that with a grain of salt because everyone says you don't listen when you're not listening to what they want you to listen to. At least that's what I thought. So I was like, oh, let me just take that with a grain of salt. But I did not realize that what we do in the natural also reflects in the spirit. So if we're acting this way in the natural realm, we're probably acting that way in the spiritual realm. And the way we act with our carnal parents is probably how we're acting with God. I didn't think I was disobedient until I started seeing consequences. And I was like, maybe let me analyze my situation. Let me dive deeper into it. So my disobedience showed up in the same way each time. So I was like, okay, obviously there's a history here. So let me get down to what's this pattern, because it always happened the same way. God does not give me grace to travel with other people that I'm not married to. He's never allowed me grace to do that. I know people are like, oh yeah, I've went on a vacation. I've had my boyfriend and we went here. God does not have that grace for little old me, okay? He's very strict. And I find this funny because I'm reading the Bible in chronological order, and we're talking about Moses. And you see Moses does one thing and he can't go to the promised land, but everyone else has been complaining the whole time. But God said he's chosen, right? God depended on Moses to do something. Many are called, but few are chosen. So it's a level of grace that others can get. Maybe you can't. Okay? I don't make the rules. So I was like, okay, maybe this is my Moses moment and I never knew it. So he never gave me grace to travel with anybody. Okay? The only people I can travel with were my family. Okay? Anytime I tried to schedule a trip, even if it was a local trip, hey, I'm going a couple hours away from where I stay. International trips, he said no. You do not get grace for any of that. All the shenanigans, absolutely not. So I'm like, man, why can't I get this right? I can name 3 distinctive instances where this has never turned out in my favor. And I've only tried this 3 times. So I'm like 0-3. Okay, I don't know why I didn't stop after 1. So the first time I tried to travel away with a friend, and I can't remember, I think it was a local trip. It was like a couple hours away from where I stay. And that trip went haywire. I mean, it didn't even last like a night. It did not last a night. I got in the hotel room, me and the person, they were acting very weird, and I was like, one thing about me is once I get in a sticky situation, I don't stay in it. Okay, I bow out so quickly. You'd be like, girl, did you even withstand? Do you have any willpower to stay? I don't. I leave so quickly. When something is so uncomfortable, I'm like, okay, I gotta go, and I call my mom. So the first time this happened, I was going on a local trip. It was a couple hours away from where I live, and I went with this guy. And I told my mom and everything about it. Honey, why was I on a red eye back the next morning? Okay? I just gotten there. Check-in is at 3, y'all. For hotels, check-in is at 3. A red-eye flight is at 5 a.m. What could have happened in this short amount of time? I was like, I can't stay here. Not with this person. I don't know what demon this is, but I'm not staying. So I get another flight, a return flight. Do you guys know I stayed in that lobby the entire time? Now, I did check in. I did go in the hotel room, but I was only there till let's say till 9. After that, I was like, I gotta go. Y'all, I did not know this, but the airport closes, okay? You can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna catch me right now and go to the airport. The airport closes. I think I got to the airport at like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. because I didn't want to continue sitting in the lobby. But yeah, it was closed. I've seen the terminals opening. Like, they weren't even letting us, like, you have to stay in the front of the airport until they open up all the terminals, they open up security checkpoints, etc. So I'm seeing them opening up. That's how long I was there, and that's how I know the airport has a closing and opening time. I was one incident. So I come back, I'm like, man, okay, that was one situation. Maybe it was a person, I don't know. A second time, here I am again. Another local trip, couple hours, actually the same city. I don't know if it was a city or me or whatever the case might be. Same issue. Now, this trip went a little backwards because we were going to drive down, okay? We were actually going to take a drive down to this city or whatnot. Me and the person ended up getting into an argument that night we were supposed to drive down. I don't know why, I can't even remember why. I can't tell you the situation, but we were not seeing eye to eye. Come to find out, he ended up driving down with his friend. And I'm thinking he's like gonna cancel the trip. No, he just drove down with his friend. So he ended up calling me. Y'all, I went out that night. I was like, whatever. I'm going out. So I went out that night or whatnot. And he calls me, and it's like the middle of the night or whatnot. And he's like, apologetic. We like get back on good terms. And he was like, hey, well, I just got you a flight so you can be here in the morning. So he got me a flight to be there in the morning. Trip was fine. We did not argue. We did not have anything. But all the stuff that he had planned kept going awry. Like, he had everything planned out, what we were going to do, and it just did not pan out that way. The friend he ended up picking up was with another situation, another girl, kept having us late for everything. And it was just so chaotic. Like, it wasn't necessarily me and him, but it was just so chaotic that we were like, we probably shouldn't do any of this stuff because look at what's going on. So that was the second time this happened. And I'm like, I just do not have luck when traveling. Well, that did not top it off. I took an international trip with someone. And I will come back to how much all this cost me financially. We're talking about the cost that I had to pay for disobedience, but I'm going to come back and reel it all in of how I just did not listen and how it affected my finances and my mental health, my emotional health, and why I will never do it again in my life. So this was the cherry on top. Since this situation, I have never stepped foot out of this city with anybody, with anyone outside of my family. We decided to take an international trip, and we were going to a country I'd never been to. And it was all set up because it was going to be like a group trip with a lot of people that I knew. So it wasn't going to be like just me and the person. It was going to be like a friend group of us because we'd all known each other. We actually worked together. So I was like, okay, this is going to be great. I'm not like attached to this person. I have people there that I know, etc. And the trip from New York to the island we went to, which was Aruba, was like 2 hours. So I was like, okay, it's not that far, right? It's not like a 13-hour trip across the world. No, it was a couple hours. So I was like, if anything goes awry, this is the case. I'll be fine. Okay, all this is happening. Tell me why at the time I'm trying to go on this trip, a storm comes on the East Coast, and they're like, oh, all the travel is being, you can't travel into New York. No one is traveling outside of New York, etc. Flights are getting canceled, etc. But again, I have to fly into New York because I wasn't in New York at that time. So I was actually I'm in Texas. So I had to fly from Texas to New York. So I ended up getting a direct flight. Again, financial burdens. So I ended up getting a direct flight, which cost a lot. Last minute direct flight out the country. And I was like, okay, well, I've already got like hotel stay, I already got everything booked. People are there waiting, etc., etc. again, just not listening to God. When God says no, he means no. Do not go against it. So I was texting my family and whatnot. And remind you, this was a last minute trip too. So I had to go and get all my clothes. I had to get everything done very quickly. So my mom and my sister are like, oh, well, don't go. Like if it's all of this, like, just don't do it. And I'm, again, just, I'm just me. So I continue. And I get on my flight, I make it there and whatnot. And it's beautiful when I get there. And I'm like, okay, maybe this was all what it was worth. Not even that night, or it was maybe the next morning, me and the person who invited me got into it. I don't even know over what. It was literally over what time we were gonna leave to go, like, do all of our dues. Like, oh, we're gonna go eat, or we're gonna go look around, or we're gonna go and get on the boat. Whatever the case was, it was over that. And the response, it was so toxic. It was like a lot of energy there. And the person ended up becoming upset with me. And I'm like, first off, when people become upset with me, I don't know how to remedy the situation at that point. I'm like, why are you upset? And then I become upset. So it's all heated. So the person was like, well, if this is how you're going to act, then I don't even think you need to be on the trip. Come to find out, everyone that was supposed to come on that trip had canceled. No one told me. They had canceled the trip because they got into a motorcycle crash or accident a few nights before, and they were like in the hospital. Did not tell me any of this. I did not know any of this. I was like, where's everybody at? So I was like, you see, this is probably why God was like, girl, don't go. So me and this person have fell out. This is the only person I know on this island, and they literally don't even want, they're like, hey, we can get separate hotel rooms, we can do whatever, but this is just not going to work out. Never spoke to that person again. They didn't ask if I got home safely. They never spoke to that person again. So I was like, you see, and that trip broke me, because I was like, I've sacrificed. I've came across the country. I'm thinking, and we were supposed to have like a 7-day trip. It was like a 5 to 7 day trip. I've come across here. I'm thinking that we're more than what we are. I think at least we're friends, and we're not even that. You don't even care how I get back home or whatnot. And the stressful part was that I was trying to change my flight, but I'm in another country. So it's not like you can just pull up your phone and be like, let me just, no. The hotel that I stayed in had to call the hotel on my behalf. I had to stay on the phone for an hour until a representative got on there to change my flight. And thank God it was one coming out the next day. So then I had to go find a hotel room just for that night. And remind you, this is this happened in the morning, so I had a full day until I had to fly out the next day. So of course, in that time, I was just like, God, like, really? Is this my life? It was, again, disobedient. Because what I did not mention in all of these stories is that God always told me no. It was always something. I remember, and I hold this because I was like, man, I shouldn't have done this. It was my mom's event, the only event I've ever missed to go on one of these trips. And she always hosts events, and me and my sister, we always go and support her. So this was the only event I end up missing to go on these trips, and look how they end, So I'm like, and God tells me all the time, don't do this, don't do this. And I continue to go full throttle ahead. And the implications of these are not just emotional. They're usually financial. They're usually mental and spiritual, because they break you down. I remember when I was coming back from Aruba, I just called mom and I was just crying. I was just crying because I was like, how could this happen? Like, really? And I couldn't get myself together, because I'm like, what just happened? Like, I couldn't fathom it. And I just remember on the flight listening, I only had one song downloaded. And that was the song Dependable God. And I just kept listening to it. And I cried that whole flight back. The whole flight back. And my poor mom was just like, come home. Like, she's keeping up. Hey, are you in the vehicle? Like, have you made it to the airport? Have you got on the plane? Are you comfortable on the plane? When are you gonna land? Like, she's asking all these questions. How are you gonna get back home? Are you okay? And she's not the one that's like, I told you so, but I know when she says, hey, you shouldn't have went, I went, and then this is the result. I'm sure she's thinking like, man, I knew this would happen. So all of that destroyed me. And it took me 3 instances to get this lesson. But that's the implications of it, because all of this did cost me. And I didn't have to, because I could have listened to the voice of God. I could have listened to the people around me that God put in my life to tell me no. It wasn't about, no one's allowing me to have fun. It's just not a grace there. And one thing about disobedience is you get out of the rim of protection, okay? You do, and these things happen. The enemy can come in and play however he likes. Now, it's a limit to that. It's a limit to it that God allows, but it's still allowed. You know, nothing stopped these situations from happening. Just thank God that they weren't detrimental to me. I didn't lose my life. I didn't, it was a financial loss, but that was it. But disobeying God does come with consequences. We have to live by what God says to live by. And when he says no, he means no. And if there's not a grace there, there's not a grace. And there wasn't a grace for me. He kept showing me that over and over again. And I remember, this is not in this situation, but I always ask God, why does these things happen? And the why never comes until later, guys. We never learn the why until after the situation. And I realize that now I'm looking back, is because there's not a grace there for you. There's not a grace there that God allows that. When God said many are called but few are chosen, his chosen people he depends on. We're not allowed to do certain things that the world is able to do and get away with. You might see 1,000 people doing wrong, and as soon as you do it, you get caught. That's because there's not a grace there for you, because God said, I've called you higher. You know better. I've told you better. You've heard me and you've disobeyed me. And God does not allow that. Okay. And I see that repeated with the story of Moses. Moses, instead of speaking to the rock, he hit the rock. And God said, I didn't tell you to do that. But reminder, the Israelites had sinned all these years. Every time they complained, they sinned every time, and God did nothing. Each time Moses would go on their behalf, God would forgive. Each time Moses was, anytime they needed something, God would provide it. And it was limited consequences. But Moses does one thing, and there's this huge consequence, and that is how this works. God says, you know better. I depend on you. You know me very well. Me listening to the voice of God would have saved me many, many times, because it's saving me now, because now the only thing that I listen to is the voice of God. If God says no, it's no. I don't even argue back with it. I don't even question if it's him or not. If it's no, it's no, because I've seen the consequences of that. And what we don't talk about is how long sometimes it takes us to rebuild from these things we've went through. How long it takes us to trust again, how long it takes us to be open again, how long it takes us emotionally to heal these places in us. And the burden that it is, the burden we carry, because now, what if that situation, you get married and now you are afraid to travel with your husband or your wife because of these past instances or these past aggressions. This is what we don't see, because God is a God who sees the future. And we only see our now. So you don't know what it comes with or what cost comes with that. And again, this is spiritual. God probably seen the spirit of those people, the heart of them, and knew that, no, these are not people that if anything were to go wrong, I can entrust they will know what to do. If anything were to happen to you, I can't trust that they would even know what to do, how to take care of it, who to call, who to contact, how to pray, or that I would even listen to them, So these are things we do not see. But the cost of disobedience is higher than the financial cost that I dealt with, because in all of these events, it was an action. I did not enjoy myself. It left a bad taste in my mouth. It ruined those relationships, because obviously I did not go back. I could not go back to any of those relationships. And these are the ripple effects. And again, the only thing that I say in that is I thank God, because I got to see the heart of those people that maybe I wouldn't have seen. So of course it all works out for your good. God is going to show you things and help you learn the lesson. But some of these things, if we obey and listen to God, we can negate, you know. We don't have to go through certain situations to learn, because obedience is wisdom, telling us you don't have to go through the fire to know that it's hot, you know. But I'm so grateful for those lessons, because it showed me in real time that God is not a God that we should be playing with. He's not a God that we should be, willy-nilly with. No, he's a God of principle, a God of structure. He's a God who, if he says it, he means it. You know, and honoring what he says is obedience. Honoring that he knows what's best for us, even though we want something more. You know, in those situations, I wanted it so bad. I wanted to enjoy those trips so bad. I wanted to go so bad. And look at the cost of it. Look at the cost of that. So there is a price to pay for this disobedience. And again, a lot of the world talks about gut feelings or women intuition. I don't label them like that, because God is who he is. The Holy Spirit reigns on this earth supreme. And these feelings that we call, or that we've mislabeled, or whatever you might call them, that's the Holy Spirit telling you, look out. And I just use those examples of traveling, because I know a lot of times we're like, oh, we want to travel, we want to have these vacations, we want to do this stuff, and sometimes they don't go the way we want them, because God is not ordained them. It's not in alignment with his word, with his principles, with his desires for our life, and they don't work out. But then you'll see people have successful trips all the time, flying back and forth anywhere that they want to, and you're like, why is that not my case? Grace, okay? God did not allow grace for that for you. But these gut feelings that we have is the Holy Spirit telling us not to do something, and listening to it is obedience. And the quicker we learn obedience, I promise our lives change, because now we are humble before the Spirit of God. We are humbled now before the Spirit of God. I am not second guessing the voice of God. God can tell me right now, Ashley, go outside with a red shirt. I'm not questioning it. I'm going outside with a red shirt. God can show me a parking spot at the front of the building. And if he tells me, Ashley, do not park in that parking spot, I'm not. I'm parking my car at the very end and I'm walking. Because I've seen the price to pay for disobedience. And it's not a price I want to pay anymore, because I can't afford to pay it anymore, because it's too costly for me. When God tells me something now, I'm listening 1,000%. I don't care how minute it is. I don't care if I'm thinking, if it's him, is it me? We'll figure it out later. But it's better to listen to that voice than not. Because everyone who's negated that voice and not listened, they've always come back and said, well, man, if I would have just listened to that voice, this wouldn't have happened. And God gives us that. So in this season of my life, that's all I want. I only want to be guided by that voice. I only want to obey the best that I know how. If I fail, or if I do not do something right, it's truly because I did not know. It's truly because I didn't hear anything and I just didn't know. But it won't be because I ignored God in this season. It will not be. It will not be. And if that means I have to wait, I'm waiting. And if God doesn't give me a response, I don't move. It's as simple as that. And if it does not align with the word of God or the plans that God has set for my life, I'm not doing it. I'm not coming to covenant with anything outside of the will and word of God. And never forget that obedience is a form of humility, because it shows God that we're humble servants before him, that when he says something, we believe it wholeheartedly. And that is what moves the heart of God. When we're obedient, that's what moves the heart of God. You can go do 1,000 good deeds in the world, but if you're disobedient, it meant nothing. It meant nothing. So I hope my stories have helped you in some way. Or maybe you can relate. Comment your own experiences. Let me know if there's been a situation where you've been disobedient or obedient and you've seen the results of it. Because that is a thing as well. I've been obedient and I say, I'm glad I listened to the voice of God in this situation, because it turned out for my good. The enemy was not able to come and steal, kill, and destroy. So this can go either way. But I'm so grateful for the voice of God and now being obedient to who he is. So please comment, share your support, and meet me back here for the next episode. Bye.